Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys.
So yeah, you got to know it, buddy.
You got your banner, and I forgot to bring my cube with me. That's over in the other room. So
we'll just use a previous episode and tell people to look for the cube in episode whatever the one was like a few weeks ago.
We can bring Fat Albert and illustrate how complicated and shifting sand the income tax code is all the time. But listen, just before we get cranking here tonight, I need to correct something that I said last week. I have no clue why I thought that Vern Buchanan here in Florida was no longer on the Ways and Means Committee. I was mistaken about that. He is still on the committee. Not only is he on the committee, he is the vice chair this time around. So my brothers and sisters a little south of here down in his district need to get a hold of him and make sure that the fair tax bill gets through the Ways and Means Committee in a positive manner. So my apologies for that little old man's brain freeze there. But yes, Vern Buchanan is indeed still on the House Ways and Means Committee.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, well, it's a little windy up here in North Carolina today. It's nice and sunny, and next couple of days are going to be nice. I understand you have some weather coming in down there on our recording date.
Yeah, we do.
February.
Yeah, we are recording this on Friday, February 3rd, which just happens to be the first home baseball game for the junior college that I do the PA announcing for. And we're trying to decide if they're going to play the game or not because it's raining on and off, and they haven't called it off yet. So I guess we'll go do baseball.
Well, that's fine. That's why we're recording this at 4:30 in the morning, and my hair looks
not quite well.
Actually, that's not true. But my hair does look like this, probably because it's very windy here in the truck.
Okay, well let's get on down to business here because there's some cool things in this week's Congress.gov segment that we need to get to, and we will start off with a couple of them that just kind of, again, they illustrate the shifting sand nature of the income tax code. They'll give you something, then they'll take it away, then they'll make it temporary, then they'll make it permanent, whatnot. It's just an endless circle there.
And for other purposes.
And for other purposes, yes. We will start with H.R. 790 to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to repeal the firearm transfer tax and for other purposes. That's Ashley Henson from, I think that's Iowa, District 2. And right next to that, under that, is S-234, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to permanently extend the new markets tax credit and for other purposes. So you're going to repeal the firearm transfer tax, and then the next Congress will put it back. This bill will extend the new markets tax credit supposedly on a permanent basis until the next Congress changes that around. The tax code is always changing. It is always shifting. What is a good decision today may not be such a good decision under next year's tax code. And it's just crazy that we have a system that works like that.
Well, it has a lot to do with the fact that depends on who's in charge and what gets through in debate and finally becomes law. But that tax code is pages and volumes, and you've seen pictures of them running the bills and things like that through the halls of Congress on a flatbed trailer to get them around from one office to the next, or maybe into the printing press to make millions of copies of it. But I mean, it's unbelievable. There's no need for a tax code that's not, number one, convoluted and so easily manipulated for special interests. I think that's where the fair tax comes in and is a pretty good deal, actually.
Yeah, well, that's why the Congress critters and the lobbyists up there love the income tax, because they make lots of money proposing these changes that we look at. And we only have time to look at a very small fraction of them all, but I try to go through and pick out the best ones. And here's another one that actually should sound pretty familiar. This is H.R. 646 to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to remove short-barrel rifles, short-barrel shotguns, and certain other weapons from the definition of firearms for purposes of the National Firearms Act and for other purposes. That is not the same bill as the one that we put in the Hall of Shame a couple of weeks ago,
Right.
monkeying with the definition of firearm. And by the way, I got some feedback on that.
Yeah.
We had somebody tell me, hey, wait a minute, those bills shouldn't be in the Hall of Shame because they are actually trying to accomplish, a positive purpose. They are not shameful. And I guess
They're shameful when it comes to using the tax code to get the thing done.
That's it. When we
I
put a
agree with
bill, when we put a bill in the Hall of Shame, it's not necessarily to say that that bill is trying to accomplish a shameful purpose. It's to illustrate how absurd, how convoluted, how
Right.
incomprehensible, how unstable our tax code is. Why we have a tax code that has that stuff in it just is why we put these things in the Hall of Shame. And I'm sorry, if you're telling me that the length of the barrel determines whether or not a rifle or a shotgun is a firearm, that is absurd on its face. And to put that in the tax code is definitely worthy of the Hall of Shame. So I hope whoever was looking at that kind of understands what we're doing here. But can you imagine?
Not for the legitimacy or good nature of a good purpose of the bill necessarily, but the fact that it's being used or implemented through the tax code is what's
we're not judging the shamefulness or unshamefulness, whatever, of the bill itself. We're just illustrating that the tax code is just out of its mind to
we'll
have
put a
stuff
disclaimer
like this
underneath your congress.gov now that says we are not shaming the various nature of the bills.
Okay. No, I'm not trying to. I think it's rather crazy that the National Firearms Act, which apparently was a separate piece of legislation at one time, has now been incorporated into the Internal Revenue Code, that's in there in the first place. And to have a tax code that tells you that whether or not a rifle is a firearm based on the length of the barrel is just kind of nutso. So that goes in the Hall of Shame as well.
Yeah.
One more here before we get back into what we're going to do. And this is another one, the bill to attend. Here we go. S-187, what it is. A bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to deny the trade or business expense deduction for the reimbursement of employee costs of child gender transition procedures or travel to obtain an abortion. Now, can we keep the politics out of the tax code, for goodness sakes? Wow.
Yeah, it's everywhere, and it's typically, I think, generated by the need to take care of a special interest obligation. If you can consider it an obligation, because all of politics is obligating yourself to help someone else so you can get your thing taken care of. So whether it's from another a colleague or whether it's from a lobbyist or other influencer.
Yeah, well, actually, that's Senator Rubio here in Florida, S-187, to amend the code to deny the trade or business expense deduction for the reimbursement of employee cost of child gender transition procedure or travel to obtain an abortion. We're not going to touch either of those issues, as issues per se. We're just going to say that it's crazy that kind of stuff is in the tax code. And so that will wrap up our Congress.gov segment for this time. I got a couple of really goodies we'll put in next week's program as well. Good. But we need to get on to the rest of the story.
Part two.
Actually, this is part three. We originally
part three. Yeah.
We originally thought that we
having so much fun with this.
Might be two parts on it that might spill into three. Well, we're going to do three. We're definitely going to do a fourth one. We've still got enough to do that. And who knows beyond that, because there's just a lot of misinformation and flat out propaganda that's being propagated in the media about the fair tax. And right quickly, I would point people to this week's chairman's report that Steve Hayes writes. We're recording this on Friday, February 3rd. And just this chairman's report that came out this morning was about the lies and untruths that are being propagated in attacking the fair tax. So if you can go to fairtax.org under the news tab in the main menu, there's a chairman's report archive. We're not going to go through the chairman's report in its entirety here. We'll just go ahead and encourage people to go there and read it. But that's what Steve wrote about this week. And we're going to continue telling the rest of the story about the fair tax on today's program and next week's program. And then beyond that, there may be even some more stuff we need to get into. But that's
as we go through discussions, and I'm watching Twitter a lot right now because there are considerable numbers of people that are discussing the various aspects and coming to an understanding. And I think it's good that folks are digging in now. There was plenty of opportunity to sort of generalize up until the point where now it looks like there's some traction in the House of Representatives to get some actual debate and movement on the FAIRtax HR 25. And so our goal here with the next several episodes is to, and you can go back and look at them because the material is going to be the same, but there's a lot of discussion out in the media and amongst the general population and on Twitter, et cetera, about the FAIRtax and what it can do to help them, whether you're single, 2-3 jobs, or whether you have kids, and so what our goal is going to be to give you, as Bob has so correctly called it, the rest of the story, so that as a follower of the FAIRtax, a listener, watcher of our program here, that you'll have some information that you can actually use, and we'll hopefully answer some questions along the way.
Yeah, well, all the interest in the media, and I'm talking about print media, broadcast media, and especially social media, is being driven by the fact that that the FAIRtax is supposed, anyway, to be getting a vote in the House this year. It's been up there for 20 years. And it's died, quietly in committee every year. Nobody paid it any attention. The media didn't pay it any attention because everybody knew that the Congress critters were just going to let it sit in committee and nothing was going to be done with it. But now that there actually might be something done with it, now people are starting to pay attention. And one of the things that you're hearing a lot in the media is 30% sales tax.
Yeah.
And so there has always been some discussion and maybe some confusion around the actual FAIRtax rate. Now, some of this is undoubtedly caused by the fact that the FAIRtax does not work like other sales taxes. It's different from the sales taxes that you are currently familiar with.
Yes.
But a lot of it's just an agenda-driven propaganda that we're going to call out for what it is.
And they'll say 30%, but then they won't say, well, the income tax goes away. They're actually letting people go ahead and go down that path of thought that it's 30% on top of what you're already paying, which is right.
You're going to pay this massive 30% tax on everything you buy, and they leave people to infer, well, now my life just got 30% more expensive, and that's just not it.
On top of inflation, which is somewhere around 7% right now.
Yeah, but we're talking about the FAIRtax rate here. Now, sales taxes, again, as we know them, are exclusive. That means they're calculated as a percentage of the price of an item and then added on at the cash register, meaning if you purchase an item that has a price tag of $100 on it, you carry it up to the cash register, there's a 7% state sales tax, you will pay $107 for that $100 item after the tax is added on.
Correct.
And people are saying 30% sales tax and hoping people will think, well, then now my $100 item is going to turn into a $130 item when I take it up to the cash register. That is just exorbitant and unsustainable. But the FAIRtax is different.
Yes.
That's your cue to go to point 2.
Oh, the FAIRtax is different. Yes, I'm sitting here listening to you because you're doing such a great job. Like the taxes you pay on gasoline and diesel fuel, the FAIRtax is inclusive. It's included in the price, not added onto the marked price of an item. When you go to the gas station, you look at the sticker on there. Normally it says federal tax in this price is this amount. North Carolina is on there here in North Carolina, Florida. So that it's inside that $3.06 or $3.20 and 9/10 cents you're paying.
It's $3.59 here in Central Florida.
Hey, you need to move back up here. We're down to, you go to Sam's Club, you can get it for right around $3.25. So anyway, the taxes on fuel, you're going to pay it. You're going to put the pump back in the handle, back in the pump and everything, and you're going to drive off. Unlike the taxes on fuel, you'll actually see how much FAIRtax you've paid on every retail receipt.
You get a receipt for your gasoline. You say you pumped 10 gallons at $3.50 a gallon. You paid $35 and you went on your way. It doesn't show you how much the tax you paid on it. And believe me, federal tax man, state tax man, and in a lot of cases, local and county tax people are all standing there at the pump with their hand out every time you pump gas, but
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't see what you pay them.
Yeah,
But,
road taxes, et cetera, which come in handy depending on what state you're living in, because some of the roads in North Carolina, they do a pretty good job, but it's far. Everybody's always far behind. Well,
we've always quoted the fair tax rate on an inclusive basis to make
Yeah.
it kind of apples to apples with the income tax. Because
Right.
if you have $100,000 of taxable income and you got a 23% tax rate, you pay 23,000. That's 23% of your total what you make. And
Correct.
on the fair tax, the tax is considered as a percentage of the total that you spend. That's inclusive basis. If you go by to the shelf and you find $100 item under the fair tax, you take it to the cash register. You don't pay 107 for it unless there's a state sales tax added onto it. But the fair tax does not add anything on to the price of the item when you take it to the cash register. You buy $100 item. We'll just leave the state and local taxes out of it for right now. But you pay $100 for that $100 item. You'll get a receipt that will show you that of that $100 that you spent, 23 of it was fair tax and 77 was actually the cost of the item that the store keeps.
Correct. And when it's expressed on an exclusive basis out of, like you would anything that you would buy at the grocery store, the fair tax adds 23% in tax to a $77 items. 23 is roughly 30% of 77. So the tax rate is 30%. That's where that number 30% is coming from. Of course, fair tax opponents accuse fair tax supporters of using tricky math in order to make the rate look lower than it is, when in truth, fair tax opponents are twisting the way the fair tax works in order to make the rate look higher than it is. And on top of that, not including in the headline that the income tax goes away along with the Internal Revenue Service. And that's the biggest part to me, is that we are getting rid of a bureaucracy that totally invades our lives on a regular basis. And especially right now in tax season. Welcome to tax season.
Yeah, so that's the difference between the 23% rate and the 30% rate. But in either case, the actual dollar amount of tax you pay is the same. If you say that you're paying $23 worth of tax on a $77 item, that's a 30% tax rate. Right. Or you're saying you're paying $23 in tax out of a total spend of $100, that's a 23% rate. In either case, it's $23 in tax. But of course, most of the media, they lead left, and they're going to try to make the fair tax look as bad as they possibly can. So they're running with this 30% figure to make it look as bad as possible. Yeah,
that's the headline right now.
Again,
they're just have to find out exactly what that means. Most people are going to sit there and go, "Oh my gosh, 30%! I'm going to pay that on top of and the income tax. This is crazy."
That's just it. They're trying to say that the fair tax is a 30% tax on everything you buy, and leave you to figure out that, oh, wait a minute, this is going to make my life 30% more expensive, and I can't afford that, which is certainly just plain not the truth. Again, you've hit on this. To properly understand the fair tax, you have to remember it replaces the income tax. And I don't know about you, I have not heard anybody griping about a 30% income tax rate. In fact, many of the people who are opposing the fair tax, and they're saying that this 30% sales tax is exorbitant and unworkable, they're the same people that want even higher income tax rates. So
right.
It just does not compute. I'm sorry.
And the other side of it too is right now high inflation. People are concerned about they're having to give up this to get this, and so the headline is 30% tax and is unsustainable and un-American, et cetera, et cetera. And in reality, and they're hoping that at that point the general population is going to basically go, "Oh, no, we don't want that." And that be the end of it. But I've noticed this is a trend that I've noticed in the last week or so on Twitter, primarily, which is where I've been living for the last 2 or 3 weeks on this, that folks are beginning to battle back against those erroneous headlines the general population is digging in and realizing this can't be right. And they're talking about getting rid of the Internal Revenue Service, which isn't being mentioned.
Yep.
So that army of folks who are seriously debating the benefits of the fair tax are now realizing, hey, this is pretty good. It goes back to our saying, once you understand it, you'll demand it. And I believe I see that trend beginning to accelerate in a lot of the individual conversations and comments that are showing up on those posts that headline 30% tax.
Yeah, they say you're going to pay a 30% tax, but they don't tell you that you're going to bring home your entire paycheck with no federal withholding, no payroll taxes. You'll have significantly more money in your pocket with the fair tax. You'll pay taxes when you spend your money, not when you make it. Now, if you look at the income tax, you can look at it and fix that. Wait a minute, the income tax does not tax every dollar that you make.
Right.
There are personal exemptions. You have exemptions for how many kids you've got deductions you can take. And of course, there's the standard deduction that the huge majority of taxpayers actually take, even though some people do itemize and get more. But in either case, the deductions and the exemptions represent money that is not subject to the income tax. And that's why taxable income is significantly less than gross income.
That's correct. And in a like manner, the fair tax does not tax every dollar you spend. Let me say that again. The fair tax does not tax every dollar you spend.
Just like that, they're trying to tell you you're going to pay this tax on everything you buy. Well, not technically, yeah, but here's the rest of the story.
The fair tax contains a family consumption allowance that acts as a standard deduction. That's the amount you can spend tax-free. Your consumption allowance is the poverty level for your household side and is adjusted every year. It's a number that is already derived in the calculations that the federal government does to establish that annual poverty level number. And so the prebate is calculated based on that. And people say, oh, it's a government entitlement. It's they're giving everybody money. It's it's the living wage that no, it's actually what it is it's your money that you would have given in your paycheck to the federal government on a monthly basis that you don't get to see until after you do your tax returns by April 15th of the following year. And this is the money you get it back in advance of the month that you're getting ready to use it in. That way you get to spend that money, the prebate money, on whatever you, as your family, as head of your household, as you as an individual family member, as you deem necessary and essential. And beyond that, you can spend it on beer and pretzels if you wanted to, or you could spend it on baby formula, or you could put gas in your car, or any number of other things, or you could save it. You could save that money.
But again, Chris, the income tax does not tax every dollar you make. The fair tax does not tax every dollar you spend. Since you're talking about money you're making versus money you're spending, the mechanism for applying these deductions has to be different.
Yeah.
So with the income tax, you add up your exemptions and deductions and then subtract that from your total income, and you pay tax on the difference. Now with the fair tax, of course, the tax is going to be included in the price of every eligible purchase, i.e. new goods and services. Right. But the tax you pay on your spending up your consumption allowance is refunded to you every month. Again, it's just the same as the tax refund. You pay more tax than you owe, you get back what you didn't owe. And so again, the prebate is a refund of the tax you pay on your spending up to your consumption allowance, which in effect means that spending is tax-free. You don't take a dime out of your own pocket to pay the tax on your spending up to the poverty level, because you are given this prebate in advance. That's why we call it a prebate instead of a rebate. It's a refund given in advance of taxes collected from you that you do not owe. And as you mentioned, it's being painted as a massive new entitlement. I even saw one article that called it a universal basic income.
Well, again, and I'll go back to what I said a second. Yes, that's right. That's the phrase right there that catches everybody's attention, because a lot of people say, well, I don't want to, the government to start paying me. Where's that money going to come from? When it's mentioned at all in any debate at the headline level, the prebate is being painted as a massive new entitlement, as Bob said. It is neither. It is a refund of the tax that you paid but did not owe. It's also a mechanism that gives the fair tax a standard deduction and eliminates, this is the important part, eliminates the regressivity of an ordinary sales tax. Who benefits from that the most? The working poor.
Yeah, we got to scoot through this. We got about 3 minutes left. But again, understand that with the income tax, the government takes its cut of your earnings right off the top before you even get it, which means thanks to withholding, you're paying the government before you can buy your family's basic necessities. With the fair tax, you don't take a dime out of your pocket until after you've provided the basic necessities. And so with the fair tax, we say you feed your family before you feed the government. But again, we want to shoot down this 30%. Your life is going to be 30% more expensive myth, unless you're Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. You're not going to pay anywhere near 30% of your income in taxes with a fair tax. So let's take a quick look at a middle-class family using the 2023 figures. Assume they spend $100,000 a year. 23% of that is $23,000. So they will pay $23,000 in fair tax at the register. The rest of the story, go, sir.
Family consumption allowance is $39,440. It's based on household size, not income.
That's the amount they can spend tax-free. You're going to spend $100,000. You can spend $39,400 on just under 40% of what you spend is tax-free.
That's right. 23% of $39,440 is $9,071. That's how much of the family's total fair tax bill is covered by the prebate. And the family pays $13,929 in fair tax out of pocket for an out-of-pocket tax rate of
10.9%. Nowhere near 30, less than half of the 30%, and that's for a middle income family. So it's just crazy.
It really does pay to get deep into this, and as I said before, I'm really excited because I see a lot of the American people out there are really digging in and beginning to essentially shoot down those headlines that we see that say it's a 30% tax and then leave it there for everybody to say, well, wonder what that 30%, golly, 30%, holy mackerel. Well, we just shot that down. Please make a bookmark on this episode and come back to it when you have somebody tells you this is a 30% tax and you're going to have to pay it. Remind them.
Some people will look at that and say $13,929 is a lot of money, but realize that if under the income tax, you'll pay 7.65% in payroll taxes. You'll pay $7,650 just in payroll taxes before you pay your income tax.
Exactly.
So if you consider payroll taxes plus income tax, this family will pay a lot more than $13,929 in federal taxes with the income tax over the fair tax. So that's gonna do it. I tell you, time flies when we're having fun. We will continue this rest of the story series next week here on FAIRtax Power Radio. But for now, we thank you for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So what would you do for her?
Well, we've got several programs that will help her. We just need to find out how much she makes. But the good news is, the less she does, the more we can help.
Yeah.
If I may, with the fair tax, we wouldn't even tax her income. So the more she makes, the more she has.
But still, a consumption tax could eat up a lot of her income.
Which is why at the beginning of every month, we're actually going to give back all that she pays in taxes on basic necessities.
You're going to give her back her taxes?
Every month, on everything taxed on basic necessities. But we're also going to give it back to you and to every American citizen.
Why?